Hi guys, we are students of dentistry and also like a club at Pitt. But hi, welcome to our meeting this week. Today we are holding an event for I think a lot of people like upcoming seniors who are admitted, like I guess interviewing. So today we have three panelists. We have Brandon, Brandi, and Sonia who are D1s currently, and they are going to be answering all of our questions and concerns regarding virtual interviews. So yeah, before we get started with our questions, would the panelists want to introduce themselves? Anything fun?
Okay, I guess I'll start. So hi guys, my name is Brandon Valerio. I'm a current D1 student at the University of Florida College of Dentistry, and I'm a Florida native, so this is my state school. But I did go to Nova Southeastern University for undergrad, which also has a dental school, so I kind of have like experience with both schools. And then I'm also a National Health Service Corps scholarship recipient for dental school. And I can also talk about that if anyone has questions. But that's a little bit about myself.
That's awesome, Brandon. Hi, everyone. Nice to meet you. My name is Brandi. I'm currently a D1 at UAB, University of Alabama at Birmingham. But I'm actually from Georgia, but I went to undergrad up in a small school in Michigan, so kind of all over the place. Really excited to start my dentistry journey. I have a passion for serving underserved populations. That's kind of something that drew me to dentistry and something I'm kind of excited about. So a little about me.
Nice. And then my name is Sonia, and I am a current D1 at University of Pittsburgh. And I went to undergrad in Long Island, New York, a smaller school called Farmingdale State College. And then before then, I lived in the Dominican Republic. I was born and raised there until I was 16. So that's pretty much a little bit about myself. I am very excited to be here, very excited to be answering you guys' questions. I know I attended a lot of Zoom meetings and all kinds of events when I was applying and in the process of interviewing. So hopefully you guys find it as helpful as I did.
All right, so on to our first question. So this is like an intro question, and it is, how was your interview process? Was there a lot of flexibility when, receiving your interview questions or your interview like dates? And how did you prepare for them? Are there like online resources that you can find?
Yeah, so I guess I'll go first. So in terms of when I received my interviews, I kind of received all of mine before December. So I was one of the lucky people that kind of found out about everything in December. But essentially, either there's two things that are going to happen. Either the school is going to tell you a date and you either work with it, or you have to contact them and try and change it if they let you. Or the other thing is, like, they'll typically send like a calendar to you and you kind of like pick your date. So for example, because I went to NSU for undergrad, that school uses a calendar system. So you literally pick what works best for your schedule. And I believe they were like Wednesdays and Fridays, right? But then like UF, which is the school I currently attend for dental school, it was more so they just gave me a date and they were like, be here or not. But obviously if you had like a conflict or anything previously arranged, then you can always contact them and they'd be able to work with you the best that they can. So that was kind of my experience in terms of like scheduling with interviews. So it seemed pretty flexible. I haven't really heard of a school that is like not willing to do that, because obviously they're interested in you if they're contacting you. But at least that's how I experienced it. So
I kind of experienced the same thing. Like, I think a lot of times they either gave me one date or they gave me like 2 to 3 dates or something like that. And then you just kind of choose one. But if you have a certain reason that you can't, you let them know. I think most schools will be pretty flexible because they don't want to be discriminatory for whatever reason that you might have to miss. And so, yeah, I think it was pretty flexible. Most of the interview processes take a while though. So it will probably take up a good chunk of your day. So I would make sure not to schedule it on a day when you have like an important quiz or an exam that you can't get moved, or either work with the professor or work with the interviewer. As far as preparing, I know there's a lot of resources that you can pay for. I would advise not to pay for anything though, because I think that all like everything that's available online that's free would be like enough for you to prepare. Like you could reach out to other students. Also, like for me, I know I just like Googled like interview questions med school or interview questions dental school or even like some job interview questions. So I didn't really use that many like online resources, mostly like other people.
Yep. And then for me, just like they said, I had the options of sometimes picking the dates or sometimes they were just given to me. I never had any issues with the dates that they sent, so I just went with them. But I'm sure that if I did, I could have just emailed and let them know and they would have worked something out with me. And in terms of resources, I did the same as them. I looked up questions and I would practice them. I never enjoyed doing mock interviews, so that's something that I didn't really work for me. It works for some people, it doesn't work for some. For me, I found it more beneficial to talk to one of my advisors and go through the questions, discussing things that I should bring up, things that I should point out, and maybe make like bullet points. And then I would practice that on my own. So that was something that worked out well for me.
Yeah, and I just realized they didn't talk about the second part of the question, but basically in terms of like how I prepared, there were a couple different options that I did or that I had to me and then I did them. So like one of the big things at my undergrad institution was that the career center was like pretty good. And so I was actually able to meet with like my career advisor and we were able to like go over interview questions based off like what other students that had been accepted to dental school experienced. And then I even did a mock interview. So like 30 minutes of pretend questions. And then my career advisor was very good at giving me like feedback literally seconds after. So she was saying like how to improve on articulating this thought or talking about your journey, what not to talk about, that kind of stuff. So that was one of the things that like I would really take advantage of, especially if your undergrad institution has that available to you or like your master's program or whatnot, because that's really going to give you that feedback that you need. But like Sonia said, not everyone enjoys that like mock interview kind of thing. But I do know a lot of dental schools have like impressions days, especially UF, where like the students get to learn about the school and meet with students and all of that. But then they'll also have like kind of a like an interview kind of format as well, so that way you can practice that stuff, but like more with the student, and it's a little bit less formal and you're more comfortable because they're around your same age, or at least they were in the same boat as you, like literally a year, maybe 2 years before you. And then the last thing that I a little bit use, but like I kind of don't recommend stalking on this, is like Student Doctor Network. Obviously, this site is going to be people saying their thoughts about different schools and how their interview was. Please take it with a grain of salt. You know, people are going to be on there that have that are very opinionated about schools, whether that's good or bad. So just be careful with what you're reading, but that is a good resource just to see like if the interview is going to be more conversational or more professional, formal, or a group interview or whatnot. So that's where you can find some basic information on the school's interview format as well. So that's how I prepared for those.
All right, thank you guys. So you all sound very prepared for your interviews. Was there ever a time during your interviews where you got kind of like thrown off by a question or you were surprised by a question, and like how did you handle that?
Yeah, so this personally did not happen to me, but I know a lot of applicants get asked the ethical kinds of questions depending on the school. But it just so happened that none of the schools I applied to like asked any of that. But I know that can be a big curveball for some people, because you know you're like quick, like what is the right thing to do, and like and you're trying to answer that in such a short amount of time. But like my best recommendation for like those kinds of ethical questions are to really just think about what you would do in that situation. Like be true to yourself. There's no right or wrong answer, but to you, you know what the right answer is. And like you're the one with the best judgment in this scenario. And so obviously sometimes they may ask you the hardest ethical questions that they can think of. And they're just trying to see how you operate under stress. And if you can just formulate a good judgment and have a good morale, like in like a time of need, right? So if you don't know the answer right away, it's completely okay. Like just ask them for like a few seconds to collect your thoughts and come up with the best answer that you can. And they're not going to judge you for that, because a lot of people can't come up with these answers like literally in thin air. So I feel like that's probably the most difficult thing that you may get asked, is the ethical kinds of questions. But then also, like, for me, I guess the most difficult thing that I got asked, like, especially for my UF interview, was like, how do you know you're ready for dental school? That can be one of the hardest things to articulate, because like, you know, you're ready, but like, how do you tell people that, right? So it's best to just talk about your experiences and what you've done and why you personally believe that you're capable of having this workload and having all the hours of studying and doing the sim lab stuff and whatever. So at the end of the day, it really comes down to like how you're able to articulate your words and your self-worth and your belief in yourself, because like that, at the end of the day, it's all about you. So you're just trying to show people why you're more than capable of being in dental school. So I think that's kind of where the hard questions come, is that realm right there.
I definitely agree. A major point that Brandon mentioned is do not be afraid to say, "Could I have a?" That's a good question. Could I have a second to think about that? Because what you don't want to do is rush into an answer and then say something you regret that ruins your entire interview. So just take a breath and trust me, that second that you take is way longer in your head than it is to the interviewer, especially on Zoom, since online things are always lagging anyway. They're probably not even really going to notice. So definitely that was a key point, Brandon. About the ethical questions, I actually did not get any ethical questions, but I did learn something from taking the Casper test, which was, and also from taking ethics here, is kind of like a lot of times when people give like ethical questions, they'll kind of give like, okay, would you do A or B? So for example, you see your classmate cheating. Would you tell the professor or like confront the classmate or like say nothing or something? And it's kind of like an ultimatum, but always remember that there's always a third answer. Like there's always a, well, I would wait and like kind of scope out the situation, or I would like take time to like see if what I thought was true. Like there's always a third answer. So don't feel pressured to say like A or B, but like take time to think about it, like Brandon was saying. Also, other things that may catch you off guard, definitely, I would say look over your application. This may seem like common sense, but I was really glad that I looked over my application before, because like they would ask me like, oh, like, could you tell me about this research you did freshman year? And if I hadn't looked over it, I probably forgot some of the stuff that I did. So just make sure that you know like your experiences and can talk about it, because you don't want to come across as that you don't know what you're talking about, or that you even fabricated something. That would be really bad. So make sure you know your stuff. And I would also say other things that may have caught me off guard were more casual questions, like, what's the last movie you watched? What's the last book you watched? Because or book you read, because then I'm like, wait, what is the last like book I read? So just kind of make sure that you kind of think about yourself like holistically, like, okay, these are my hobbies. This is the last book I read. I really enjoyed it. This is the last trip I went on. I really enjoyed it. Just to kind of like be prepared for them asking outside, because they're going to ask stuff. Most likely, if they're more casual, they're going to ask things that are outside the realm of academics.
And for me, so I did have a couple of ethical questions, but they weren't any questions that I hadn't already practiced. So I had questions about, if you saw your classmate cheating, what would you do? And then also, if you have a patient who you know they need a certain treatment, but they are refusing to get the treatment done, what do you do? So I got those two. So since I had already practiced, I was able to answer them in the spot. But I think one question that I was asked that in the moment I had to take a couple of seconds to think about was, I completed the interview, and at the end, the interviewer said, she said, okay, so now I have to go to the committee and I have to convince them why you're a good applicant. What do I tell them? So she was basically asking me to sell myself. So that is something that kind of like Brandon was saying, it's a little bit hard to just sell yourself and say how great you are. And so that took me a moment and I had to think about it. And it's okay to let them know, like, okay, can I take a moment to just think about this? And then collect your thoughts, what you want to say, the things you want to bring up, and then you go ahead and let them know. And it's okay. And even for the ethical questions, you may answer the cheating question saying, oh, I would speak to my classmate and see what's going on or something. And then they might say, the interviewer will, it can be very conversational, and they can say, oh no, we actually have an office in the school that's in charge of this. So if that were to happen, we tell our students to go to the office. So even if you don't answer exactly like they would expect you to, sometimes it's okay. So don't get overly frustrated with those kinds of questions. They just kind of want to see what are your thoughts in those kinds of situations. But yeah.
Great, thank you. So still kind of on this topic of like tough questions, what would you all say like when if you were like really nervous, anxious, or shy, how best to tackle those emotions and carry on with the interview?
So as cliche as this sounds, like try and stay like cool, calm, and collected, right? Like just take a moment to breathe, because I feel like the ultimate test, especially for the UF interview, and most people that like interview at like the school that I go to, I feel like they're trying to intimidate you in some sort of way. They're just trying to see if you can like actually talk as a person and like stay calm about it and not freak out. Because the last thing you want to do is like start freaking out about like you don't know how to answer this or whatnot, and then you say something that you know you're not supposed to say, or that you didn't really mean, and then afterwards you're freaking out for 15 minutes being like, oh my god, like I said this thing, but obviously you can't go back and change that. So like in terms of like nerves and anxiety, you know, that's inevitable. You're going to be nervous, especially if it's like the very first interview you do. But let's say you have multiple interviews. The more you do it, like you realize like I'm literally just talking to another person, and they're just trying to like get to see who I am and like why I'm so passionate about this profession and why I specifically want to go to their school. So you know, sometimes nerves gets the best of you, but I feel like you just need to stay calm and just realize that the fact that you got an interview is a sign that they want you to go to their school. They're just trying to see if you're a complete package, you know, if you would fit in with their student body, if you would be good with the faculty, the class culture, all of that. So just remind yourself why you're there, and you're there for a reason, and you're worthy of being there, because at the end of the day, you know, you're doing what you need to do. And you're just trying to get in like to some school. Whether you get one acceptance, 10 acceptances, it doesn't really matter. All it takes is one. So you just need to know why you're there and just keep yourself kind of calm down at all times.
I agree. I know it can be easier said than done, but really you just have to kind of take a deep breath and realize, I mean, I don't know, are you guys' interviews going to be virtual this cycle? Yeah, okay. So since it is virtual, I mean, you are really in reality just sitting in front of a screen. So, I mean, when you really think about it, it's a lot less intimidating than being right by the person. Like I said, things lag, like the quality is bad, sound cuts out. So like you're going to be a lot more lenient when like all these little mishaps happen and stuff like that. And also because you are virtual, kind of like you know what relaxes you. So for me, like practicing it, saying it over and over again, and having like a sticky note with like main points like right beside me right before I go into the interview, that's like how I like calm down, because I'm like, okay, I know what I'm about to say, like now I'm gonna say it. So you know, if you're like in, oh, I want to be in like out a like quiet environment, that's how I'll stay calm. Or like, you know, if I practice beforehand, that's how I'll stay calm. Like have a like, you know, your routine beforehand, and just kind of like try to do something you enjoy and kind of like calm yourself down, like Brandon was saying, because at the end of the day, they are trying to intimidate you. And I did get intimidated a few times because it's nerve-wracking, but at the end of the day, they just want to know the face behind the application. You're getting an interview because they think your application is good. So really, you just have to kind of follow off of that. And also something, keep in mind, they're looking for people, not robots. So they know that you're nervous because everyone else is nervous. They know you're not going to be perfectly poised every single second of the interview. They know that things are going to happen. So just keep that in mind, and just do your best. I know it's easier said than done, but you can do it because we all did it.
Yep. And just like they said, after your first interview, you're going to feel much better. You're going to get an idea of what it's like, and you're going to see it's not as difficult or as stressful as it sounds. I mean, it definitely is a little more stressful for some people than for others. It is easier for some people to just speak than it is for others. So it definitely depends. But my advice is to just try to stay calm, take a couple of deep breaths before you go in, and always try to keep a smile, like show that you're excited. And then like thinking more of why you're here and feeling excited and focusing on the fact that you're in an interview for dental school, which is a very exciting thing. So that kind of takes away the stress from just thinking, oh my God, what if they ask me this? What if they ask me that? What am I going to say with this? So kind of just sit there and be excited and remember why you're there and show your excitement to be there. And that kind of takes away a little bit of the pressure from just thinking of like, oh, I have to remember to say this and that and that. So kind of just really be in touch in the moment. And I think that helped me a lot.
Yeah, and then really quick to add on, they can only see what's happening in this box right here. So if you need to hold a stress ball in your hand or a fidget spinner, like go for it. Obviously, if you talk with your hands, have your hands free. But like, I bet you guys didn't even notice I'm holding like my little thinking putty thing and I'm like holding it under the table and stuff. So like, if you need to hold a stress ball or something just to do something with your hands, like go for it. Obviously in an in-person interview, you're not going to be doing that, but like in Zoom, like you're more than capable of finding little things that you can stare at or whatever, or play with your hands or fidget with, that way so you can also like kind of keep yourself collected.
Take advantage of Zoom interviews.
Yes, I definitely had my sticky notes on the wall. So do what you got to do, okay?
All right. So on top of, like maintaining your zen, your calm, and just like controlling all the thoughts going inside of your head during your interview, at the end of the day, you do have to sell yourself. So the question is, what were some of the most like important aspects about yourselves when asked the infamous, tell me about yourself? How did you guys sell yourself to the committee? And, told them like, I belong here at the school.
Yeah. So I think the biggest thing with like, tell me about yourself, that's always, they're always going to ask you that, right? And whether they tell you that directly or they're just like, oh, like, what do you like to do for fun? Other kinds of questions branching off of that. My biggest thing, at least that I always practice, is do not talk about dentistry. There's a specific question for that, and the whole rest of the interview is probably going to be about dentistry or what your experiences are. So like they really just want to see that you have a life, like that you swim, that you run, that you go to the movies, that what your favorite Netflix show is, whatever. So obviously keep things within boundaries about telling about yourself, but really just talk about like who you are, what you like to do, maybe even like what your favorite subject in school is, like who knows. But you can really say whatever you want, just make sure it's being authentic. If you really have a passion for watching Broadway musicals like I do, say like, I love to watch Broadway musicals. And then that could lead into like a further conversation, down the road, and make you more comfortable, make the interviewer more comfortable. And that kind of can create a connection that will ultimately get you in, right? So when dealing with like that, just talking about yourself, obviously put yourself always in a positive light. Never talk any negatives about yourself unless they ask you a con of yourself, because the last thing you want is for them to have a negative image of you, because all they know up until this point is what was on paper. And on paper, I can guarantee you like 80% of people probably look the same on paper. Everyone was president of this. Everyone did X, Y, and Z community service or whatever. So they just want to see that, you apply yourself in different scenarios and that you're not afraid to talk to other people and that you're not afraid to join things and get out of your comfort zone sometimes. So really just like touch upon different aspects of your life that you're like really proud of, whether that's an achievement, a sport you play, a club you're in, whatever, or even just like, I'm from Miami, Florida, right? Like, which I forgot to say, I'm from Miami, Florida. Like that is part of who I am, right? So you could be like funny, you could say like, I'm from the 305, like the land of Pitbull, like whatever you want to talk about, just be genuine about it and you'll get the point across, like I guarantee it.
I definitely agree. For the tell me about yourself, try to steer clear of the dentistry stuff. Just try to talk about you as a person. Also keeping in mind that your interviewers are people too, beyond dentistry. So a lot of times, like Brandon said, you'll find a connection. Like I told someone I like this type of movie and they're like, oh really? I like used to watch that all the time, blah, blah, blah. That's how you make those connections. And those connections are going to be what they remember when they go to the committee. Because like Brandon said, everything else on paper matches up with everyone else, but they're going to remember, oh, that girl was so friendly. Like she loves this and that. And like, so it kind of makes you stand out. And don't fall into the mindset, which I did this, which is why I'm saying it. Sometimes that like your experiences are like boring or not interesting enough, because there's always going to be that person who like has done all these like extraordinary things and you're like, wow, like look, they've done all these things. But no, like you are worthy, you are capable, you're here for a reason. So be proud of who you are as a person. You know, because of who you are, that's what will make you a great dentist. Like those are the qualities that will make you stand out and that make you unique. So like Brandon said, just talk about those other aspects of your life that you really love, that you really enjoy. It really doesn't matter what it is, staying appropriate, of course. It doesn't matter what it is, as long as, you know, there are things that you're proud of, things that you're excited about. That's what they really want to see, I think.
Yep, and just add a little bit for the tell me about yourself. Just try to keep it concise and informative, I guess, in a way. Just talk a little bit about yourself, where you're from, things that you like to do, things maybe things that you value. So for me, I always mentioned that I grew up in the Dominican Republic and that I have a particular interest in working with Hispanic populations and underserved populations for that reason. So even just talking about your values, things that excite you, things that motivate you, things that you enjoy for fun. So just anything outside of the dentistry area is a nice way to dive into the interview. And like they said, you can always bring up something that'll end up being a conversation for the rest of the interview. So if you have a common interest with the interviewer, that might end up being your whole interview, just about sports or about music. And yeah, just it's kind of like you have to sell yourself without specifically saying, I am hardworking, I am determined, I am this. It's more just sharing the things that you've done, the things that have a lot of meaning to you, the things that you value, without directly saying them, if that makes sense.
And the last point is like, ultimately, you're the one setting the tone for the rest of the interview. So because at least in my experience, this is probably going to be the first thing they're going to ask you. And then the next thing is why dentistry typically. So like whatever you say is kind of what they're going to like, you know, everyone has a first impression. As bad as it sounds, just by seeing you and the first thing that comes out of your mouth, they already formulate kind of an image of who you are and what you stand for. So it really kind of matters what you say, how you connect with them, because this is ultimately what's going to set the tone for the rest of the interview for you.
All right, thank you guys. So on the topic of kind of difficult questions to answer, a lot of the questions that I keep seeing like on the Facebook groups and student doctor networks is that people get asked like, what are your top 3 schools during the interview, or like what other schools that are you applying to? So how do you approach answering that type of question?
Yeah, so I actually got this asked this question. So schools know that they are not the only school that you apply to. You know, I would say like 99.99% of applicants to dental school apply to more than 5 schools, right? Like unless you know you're in some dual program and like you're like this is like you're binded to this. No one is applying to just one school, because I feel like that's really unrealistic and you're kind of spreading yourself thin, because it's kind of like one and done, and then you're forced to take a gap year even if you don't want to, or you're forced to look at other options, right? So schools realize that like they're not the only one, right? It's imagine like in high school when you would get tests, or even in undergrad, and your professors have that mindset that like, oh, like my class is the only one that matters. Like that's not going to happen. Like they're just asking you to see why you're interested in that specific program and that school, and just to kind of see your reasoning in terms of like putting them at the top of your list, not like necessarily why you would pick them over some other school, right? Because they could probably care less about like what other schools you apply to, because they know you apply to them. So how I always approach that is, you know, it's completely okay to say your top 3 or wherever else you apply to, or even like in my case, like since I went to NSU, they asked me like, oh, like I see that you go to NSU, like why would you come to UF over NSU, for example? So they just want to see that like you did your research on the program that you're applying to, that you didn't just apply because your mom told you to, or you like the location or whatever. They want to see that you actually put effort into looking into their program. You know how many people get accepted typically, or like what area it's even in, because some people I feel like just blindly choose schools just to choose them, right? So I feel like really when they ask you like what other schools you apply to, they're just trying to see your reasoning for applying to their program specifically, and kind of they want to see your thinking in terms of like why you would want to go there and why this may be a better fit for you than like some other school, for example. So always just touch on like the positive things of the school that you like, and make sure you do your research at the end of the day, because they want to know that you're knowledgeable about their program, and you don't just blindly click submit to their school and pay however much money AdSAS is now. But
Yes, I think Brandon did a great job answering the question. That's really what they want to know. They want to know, why did you apply to this school? Did you just select 10 schools and say, I hope I get into one of them? Like, they want to know because they want someone who will be passionate about their school, who will add to their school, who will be a good alumni, a great dentist, a good image for their school, someone who will fit in well with their school and add to the school's body and be like a good contribution, not just someone who went there because they didn't get into their dream school or something like that. So you really want to show your passion for the school. Like Brandon said, did your research, make sure you look at the mission statement. It would be great if the school aligns with your personal missions. I think that would be good, something good to mention if it does. Definitely why you would choose that school. As Brandon also touched on, they will most likely be wondering why not your state school if you're applying to a school that's not in state. So make sure that you're kind of prepared to show that you're passionate about the school because you want to contribute to the school. You think that this school would be such a great fit for you because X, Y, and Z, and just kind of making that personal connection with the school, because I think that's really what it's about, like Brandon mentioned. So make sure you do your research on the school.
So I was never asked the question specifically. I was asked if I applied to a lot of schools, and I was just like, yeah, I mean, I did. And they were like, yeah, it's okay. I mean, we know you have to have options and stuff. So it wasn't in like a tricky way. She was just like, oh, like, did you apply to a lot of schools? But if I was asked, you don't necessarily have to say your top three. You can say 3 schools that you just want to share, maybe because there's a correlation with the school that you're interviewing and maybe those schools, and maybe that shows that you're applying to those schools and to this one because you're looking for that certain thing. So whether it is that school offers mission trips or more clinical hours or whatever it is, you can try to find schools that you apply to that are similar to the one you're interviewing, so that they see that there's a correlation in the schools that you're applying and the things that you're looking for. So I think that would be a good way to kind of answer that question in a way that's not just like, oh, I just want to go to these schools because they're well known or they're nice, or to give them that, to like have them know that you're thinking beyond just the name of the school.
All right,
I agree. Oh, sorry. I was just gonna say, going off of that, like, don't feel like, I think Brandon mentioned this too, like, don't feel like you have to say like, no, I'm only applying to this school, because that honestly might seem kind of suspect to them. So just like be very honest and open, but also like while highlighting all the good things about the school, if that makes sense.
All right, so we have a question in the chat from Maria. It says, hi, I have a question mostly for Sonia. I have an upcoming interview with the University of Pittsburgh. Any recommendations? What made you apply there and what made you stay? Thank you. And then it would be great if the rest of you could also give some like specific advice about your schools too.
Yep, so I'll start off. First of all, congratulations on your interview. That's very exciting. So for the interview, my interview with Pittsburgh was my first interview in the cycle. So it was a great way to get started with getting a feel for the interviews. It was honestly the most fun, most laid back, most conversational interview that I had. It was awesome. I don't know if they're doing the same thing this cycle, but it was 2 interviews. I think they were about 10 minutes each. So they're one-on-one interviews, just one interviewer and you. But you do the one interview and then you break out to the other room and do the second interview. But even in the beginning of the interview, they, when we were all there, they were like, everybody take a deep breath. It's a low stress level interview. I want you guys to just show who you are and be relaxed and enjoy the day. So they really promote being relaxed and making it as conversational as possible, because they truly just want to get to know you. I didn't have any hard questions with Pittsburgh. It was truly, truly, truly very conversational and laid back, which was awesome. I enjoyed it very much. And that was one of the first things that really drove me to the school. So just the faculty were so extremely nice. Everyone in my interview day was just absolutely amazing. And then other than that, just the program overall, I think it's a really good program. They have a SCOPE program, which is a program that's focused on serving underserved communities. So I was really interested in that. As well as they have a selectives program where you're able to, in your third and fourth year, or even early on, but mostly third and fourth year, you can pick classes that you're interested in. So like anesthesiology or how to make whitening trays, or like whatever things you're interested in, you can pick and they count towards your curriculum requirements. So I did like that you have some flexibility in choosing classes that you like, or things that can fit, like if you want to specialize, you can pick a couple of classes that would help you with that. And what else? So what made me apply there, I had a friend who I had met through one of the pre-dental programs that I went to, and she is a student here. So I spoke to her a lot and she told me all the things that she liked about the school, and I came and visited. I loved the city. Like I said, I loved my interview, loved the faculty, loved the program. And then they offer a lot of scholarships as well. So I was able to get one of their scholarships. So to me, everything just ended up matching, I guess.
Cool. I guess I'll go next. So in terms of how UF's virtual interview is kind of coordinated and put together, a couple of my friends that have interviewed this cycle said it's basically the exact same thing that I talked to them about for my cycle that I applied. But essentially, it's going to be very concise and condensed because they're trying to pack in a bunch of stuff like into like literally a couple hours, whereas normally I believe when you're in person it's like kind of an all day ordeal where you're having lunch and you're walking around and all this stuff, but can't do that online. But basically it started out with like just a presentation about the university, them talking about their programming and all of that. But they try to do it in a fun way, at least for UF. So the dean actually did Family Feud. So it was like they would have like the interviewees like kind of answer the questions and try and guess the answers and all of that. And they had like music playing. And so they tried to make it like fun to get yourself comfortable and, all of that just to get the nerves taken out of you. So that's really the point of time where you just get to see like what the school's about, even if you've never been to it in your life. So that way you can just learn about student life and academic resources, the whole shebang basically. And then next they did like a student panel. So all the administration, the deans, the interviewers, whoever else actually like leaves the Zoom call. And it's purely just like D2s, D3s, all of that. So that's the time where you can really ask the questions that you want to ask students, even if you've never talked to a student before. So obviously, be respectful, be all like ask good questions. No question is a stupid question, but there's some questions that should not be asked sometimes. So just like know the boundaries, but that's the time for you to ask them like the student perspective, get to really know what the program is about. And then the last part was simply your interview. So UF actually for the virtual interviews does it over 2 days. So depending on your last name or whatever else they look at, you could be like the first day after all the presentations, or your interview could just be the next day and it would just be your interview and that's it. So it really depends on like how they kind of sort everyone, but I believe it's by last name. So my interview was actually the second day, so kind of elongated that. But in terms of the actual interview, it was a one-on-one, but when I say one-on-one, I mean like 1-on-4 basically. So it's just one 30-minute interview, but there were 3 or 4 people interviewing at the same time, like in terms of people interviewing you, asking you questions. So in my case, it was the dean of admissions / financial aid, an alumni that was a Gator dentist, a faculty member. I believe mine was like in the endodontics program or something. And there was actually like a D4, so a current student. And they basically just like went around the Zoom room and just like each asked their question and followed up. But from my experience with my interview, it tends to be a very formal interview. So UF takes it very seriously. I know a lot of schools, or most schools, tend to be like conversational, but UF seems to be more of a professional interview where it's just like question answer, nodding their head kind of thing. But that just seems to be like how UF is. I don't know. I can't explain it. But yeah, they like to ask a lot of follow-up questions. And that's one thing that a lot of people say, is that they really try to inquire about things that you put on your application. So I believe Brandi said it earlier, but please, 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 if you're applying to UF, know about your application. They will literally like see something that you did, some club, some research project that you did, and they'll be like, oh, like, tell me about this, and then continue like diving deeper into that. So just know what you're talking about and know what you've done, because UF likes to ask about that specifically. And that kind of goes with that professional atmosphere of the interview. But other than that, that's kind of how like that interview works. And if you guys want to DM me or anything, feel free. I'll leave my Instagram at the end. But then in terms of why I wanted to go to UF, like I said, it is my state school, but I am from Miami, Florida. So it is still 5 hours from my house. And the ultimate reason is that because it's the state school, you know, it is going to be cheaper compared to like a private university, whether that's in state or out of state. So financials is going to be a big factor for a lot of people why they want to come to UF. But also UF, like holistically, is a really great school. Actually, just like 2 days ago, I think we got like named number 5 top university, like in not in as a whole, like top number 5 public university, like in the nation. So UF has a lot of prestige and, you know, all of that, like especially in Florida, and the Gator Nation is very much a real thing. So we definitely have lots of school spirit. And Brandi, sorry, but hopefully we beat you on Saturday, because we actually play Alabama, like the football game. So that's one of the reasons why I wanted to come to UF, was just like the culture of the university. And, you know, in Gainesville, UF is the only thing that's there. So everyone like goes hardcore about the sports and all of that. But then overall, like as a program, we have lots of research funding because it is a public university. We do the mission trips. So like as a whole, it really was just enticing to want to come to UF. So that's kind of my part about that. So Brandi, you can go ahead.
Awesome. Hopefully we beat you. But yeah, so for my interview, so like for the interview day, they did this something similar, like they give a presentation about the school and then later on are the interviews. For my interviews, they were pretty laid back. It wasn't too intense. One of my interviewees was pretty intimidating, but it was funny because he was the most intimidating one, but yet he was the one asking me, what's your favorite movie? And then because I was intimidated, I'm like what is my favorite movie? So that's why I say like kind of know yourself holistically. But yeah, it was, for me it was pretty casual. Like they didn't, like I said, they didn't give me ethical questions. They didn't try to trip me up with anything. They were really just like what they really kept saying was, we want to make sure, you know, you're a good fit for UAB, and you know, will fit well with like the rest of the classmates we choose and stuff like that. So yeah, the interview was pretty chill for it. And then so recommendations, I guess the things that we've been saying so far, and kind of just be yourself. Like I said, they want people, not robots. Take a deep breath. Remember that you are capable, you are worthy, you deserve that spot, so go get it. And then what made me apply to UAB? So like I said, I am from Georgia, but UAB is actually the same distance as the school in Georgia from my house. So I kind of wanted to be closer to home after being in Michigan for so long. And I started looking more into UAB, and I really fell in love with the program because of all the high numbers of requirements that were required to get. Also, UAB is very health sciences oriented, I guess, because like they have med school, they have optometry school, they have PT school. So they have a lot of other health sciences. And I'm really interested and I guess drawn to that because I'm really interested in public health. Like I said, serving underserved communities, and UAB does a lot of that too, with like surrounding communities and also like rotations to other certain communities. Also, so like kind of also club involvement also got me interested in the school as well. And just kind of getting involved. Like I wanted to get involved. I wanted to help people even while in school and be involved with the community. even while I'm in school, not just focusing on school, but doing like other things outside of that too. And UAB was a really great fit for that. Faculty is really great. Other people I knew, I think what made me apply, I knew a D2 here, and after talking to her, like she told me more about the program. I did more research on the program, and then after the interview, after it was so laid back and conversational and so welcoming and warm, and I learned even more about the program and how I could get involved even at such an early stage, made me really excited to attend UAB.
All right, thank you for all of those answers. I think if the audience doesn't have any other questions, we just have one more. And I think we touched a little bit on this earlier, like you shouldn't bring up dentistry when asked the tell me about yourself question. But are there any other things that you shouldn't mention during the interview or when asked a specific question?
So I think one of the big things is probably like politics. I don't know, like I wouldn't try and bring that up unless, you know, they specifically ask you, which I don't know. Like, I don't know if they would ask you that. Like, I wouldn't think they would. But just try and stay clear of like the political stuff or anything, even if it pertains to dentistry in some way, because, you know, that could be very polarizing and everyone has their own opinions in terms of different things. So I would just try and stay clear of that. But then also, like, just don't talk negative about yourself. That's the biggest thing. Unless they, like I said earlier, unless they specifically ask like, oh, like what's a pro and a con of you, or that you think you have. I would always just try and put yourself in a positive light. Like Sonia said, you're basically there to sell yourself, but like don't make it too obvious that you're selling yourself. Just be natural and organic about that. But yeah, like that when you guys gave me that question to prepare, that was like the thing I thought of was just like politics. But then in terms of like just like kind of preparing for an interview, I feel like the biggest thing that they could ask you that can be a little bit touchy is like issues in dentistry, right? So that's the same thing. People do have their opinions on issues in dentistry. So it always helps to kind of do research on current issues in dentistry, whether that's should a private practice like accept Medicare or anything like that, like different things like that, which I think are very good to talk about, but just also be cognizant of the fact that some people do have differing opinions on like specific issues that could arise in the field. So it's always good to be knowledgeable about the profession. Just be careful about what you're kind of conveying to the interviewer, sorry.
I definitely agree. I think, like Brandon said, one of the main points is don't talk negatively about yourself. So like something my mom told me was like, even if like they ask you like, oh, okay, like, well, when's a time where you, because a lot of times they will ask you like, when's a time where you like really had to like persevere, or when's a time in school that you struggled, or like, when's a time when you had to like work through a difficult experience or something. Always like be honest about it, show that like yes, you do have struggles if they specifically ask that, but always turn it around to a positive. So say like, yes, this happened, but I persevered, or yes, this happened, but I did this and this to cope, and these are my coping mechanisms, and this is how I work through things. So always turn things to a positive light, basically. Even if they do ask you something, or even if they say like, oh, like these are your strengths, but like could you tell me some of like the things you're weaker in? Like don't say like, oh, well, I'm bad at memorizing. Like say like, you know, like, well, like I struggled in this class a little bit, but to like help, I went and talked to the professor, and then I like developed better study skills. And so like always turn it around to the positive. Do not give them any reason to like think of you in a negative light. And like Brandon said, don't talk about anything controversial. Just stay away from all that.
I agree with everything they both said. So we have a couple of more minutes. I guess maybe we can just open it up for any other questions anyone may have. Oh, that's funny. We both recommended the book to you.
Literally, it wasn't even required because I know, like, I think some dental schools actually require you to
For
read
us,
it.
and I just
But, like,
read
I
it.
literally
I think it's
just
amazing.
I stumbled upon it and just read it, and it actually talks about like disparities within the health, like the dental profession. It's like it's a good way to kind of start thinking about that stuff, develop your opinions and whatnot. But I guess people are formulating their questions. But just a quick thing, another thing that I thought about, like to kind of maybe not necessarily avoid, but just to be careful how you're answering this is talking about other healthcare professions. So everyone has their own journey to dentistry. Some people actually start out as pre-med or pre-veterinary science, whatever you want to call it. So the biggest thing is don't talk down upon these other healthcare professions, because at the end of the day, dentistry is a very interprofessional career. So everything, oral health affects everything, and that's actually one of the things that we do at UF is that we actually have interprofessional projects with the med school and the PA program and everything. So the last thing you want to do is talk down about all of these other healthcare professions. But the schools do want to hear like why dentistry specifically, because at the end of the day, you're trying to go to dental school. And dental school is very different from med school, for example. So if they ever ask you this kind of question, or you just bring it up saying like, oh, I was pre-med first, and then I decided, maybe this wasn't the career for me, I want to do dentistry. Just do not talk badly about the other professions, because we work together, and we're all healthcare professionals. So I think that's one of the big red flags that could kind of come up is like if you're talking quote unquote trash about the other professions, even though we're all kind of equal and we're all doctors and we're all doing this kind of stuff. So that's another thing that I thought of right now.
I agree. Like they actually did ask me like why dentistry instead of like medicine, or why dentistry instead of like a similar field. And then in another interview, they actually asked me like, what would you do if like something happened to your hands and like you weren't able to like do dentistry? So like just keeping in mind like answers to those kind of questions, and then like why is dentistry your first choice? What would be your second choice and why? And why is that not your first choice? Like stuff like that, I think is very important to think about.
Yeah, agree with everything they said. And then in terms of the question about hard questions, I would say a hard question was the one that I said earlier, where she said, I have to go to the committee and convince them that you are a good candidate. What should I tell them? So that was one of the hard ones for me. And did I have any other ones that I found difficult? I don't think so. I think overall mine were very conversational. Yeah, and then let me see what else there is.
I think Chelsea asked, if you don't know how to answer a question, how should you go about it? I think the most important thing is just to say, can I have a second to think about it? And then just be as honest as possible after that. So just take a second and then just kind of be honestly like answer the question. And if you really don't know the answer to a question, just say like, I'm not, like just be honest and say like, I'm not quite sure like my answer to that question, or I'm not quite sure how I would react in that situation. I mean, it's the truth. Like they're not going to say, well, you can't be accepted into our school because like you don't know how you would act in this hypothetical situation or something. So yeah.
Just quickly for like the hardest question. I think for like my UF interview, the hardest question that I got, or the one that I was expecting, because they're notorious for asking this, but it's just kind of hard to answer in the moment, is they want to want you to talk about like a specific procedure or something that you saw during shadowing. But then, at least in my case, I said whatever I was talking about, and then they like further inquired about materials that were being used and things like that. Like obviously, as a pre-dental student, you're more than likely not gonna know exactly like what's going on, other than like they're doing an extraction or they're using CAD CAM or something like that. So it might help just to familiarize yourself with like some dental terminology or some like very simple like things going on in a dental office, so that way like if you ever get asked something like that, you still sound knowledgeable and you still are able to answer the question. But I feel like they're just kind of asking that question just to see like if you like know something about the profession and that you were being like fully focused and aware during shadowing, because shadowing is a requirement for dental school. There are varying amounts, but you do need to shadow. So I feel like that was the hardest thing I got asked, was just like what materials were being used, especially since that shadowing experience that I talked about happened like 2 years before that and everything. So, you know, that was like the hardest thing I got asked. But just at the biggest thing from that is that just know something about dentistry, whether that's terminology or like very simple procedures, or obviously not in detail because you're not a dentist, but just like know something that you can talk about it if that ever comes up.
I think Brandi mentioned this, but I was also asked what I would do if dentistry wasn't an option for me. And I said anything that would involve the healthcare and hands-on. So I left it kind of open-ended. I didn't specifically say I would do this. I was just like, you know, I would sit down and look at my options and try to find something that would allow me to still serve my community, something that still would allow me to be hands-on, work with my hands, and something that would still be in the healthcare system. So something like that.
I agree. Like I am really interested in public health. So I said, well, I would still want to do something with dentistry and public health. So, you know, like maybe a coordinator, maybe like, you know, someone who helps set up planning stuff, or educator, something like that goes along with the field, like Sonia was saying.
All right. Well, thank you guys. We don't want to keep you past 10 since we know you all are very busy. So just thank you guys for coming out. We appreciate everything you've done for us. So if anyone has any other questions, the VOL board will stick around. But thank you guys so much. We really appreciate it.
I just want to say one thing, Brandi, Brandon, Sonia, you guys were spectacular today. I mean, the content you guys gave were real life answers for interviews. If we could just go into one quick question, you know, we all get stuck in that mental block before an exam, before an interview, for example. Do you guys have maybe a personal insight that you've done to like bring up your confidence, you know, get locked in, get in the zone before you walk into that or log into that interview? If you could share a little tip.
I don't know, Brandi or Sonia, if you want to go. I'm trying to think.
I'm
going to ask for a couple seconds.
Okay. Well, one thing for sure is just know your worth. Like, know you deserve that spot. Like, you have worked so hard. When you sit down and look over your application, like, think about all those tests. Think about all that shadowing. Think about studying for the DAT. Like, remember those moments and know that I have literally fought with blood, sweat, and tears to make it to this point. And just kind of think about that and what brought you to that point. And even saying affirmations, like, even when you don't believe it, say like, I deserve to go to this, like, I deserve this spot. Like, I have worked hard to make it here. Like, I want to be a dentist because X, Y, Z. And I, like, you know, like, affirm yourself, like, speak it over yourself, like, be confident even when you don't believe it. Like, speak it out loud, speak those positive things about yourself, because we don't realize how much the negative things that we think affect us. So just bringing that positivity and like just like saying those positive things even when you don't believe it. And for me, like, it helped a lot to just like practice my responses. So like I would be in the shower and I would be like, oh, hi, my name is Brandi Seawood, nice to meet you, blah 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 blah, you know. And like I said, like, going on with the positivity thing, like, it may sound cliche, but keep a positive attitude. Keep a positive attitude, because a positive attitude will bring you so far. And like, the difference between you and another interviewee may just solely be the fact that you smiled and they didn't, and then you get the spot. You know what I mean? It's the little things sometimes. So just have that confidence, look over your application, and just think about how hard you worked to make it here. No one deserves the spot more than you. You have worked hard to get to this point. So now all you have to do is just show it in the interview. So I say just be confident, because you can't, like, the fact that you got an interview shows me that you need to be confident, because you deserve the spot. You got an interview. So all you have to do is just kind of show it. So the positive mindset, I think, is what helps me a lot.
I would say right before your interview, do whatever it is that boosts your confidence, whatever it is that makes you feel like hyped up and excited. And whether it is playing your favorite song or just talking to yourself in the mirror, saying, you got this, you're going to do amazing, and it's going to go amazing, great, everything. Or whether it is calling your best friend or talking to your family, whatever it is that'll just like allow you to start the interview feeling confident and calm and just in a positive environment, rather than just looking at a paper, oh my God, I got to remember this and this. That'll just, you'll be stressed and you're going to be a little more tense. So anything that'll just distract you for the first 10 minutes right before your interview, I think that's a good strategy to go ahead and do before your interview.
Yeah, okay, now that I collected my thoughts. So basically, the biggest opponent is you. You need to get over the hurdle of, yourself, really. So what I always did was, you want to prepare as much as you can for this interview, but don't over prepare, because the last thing you want is to be sounding like a robot that has just memorized answers and responses and everything. So what I always tried to do was, look over at so basically the thing I did was I would make cheat sheets for all like my schools. So I would literally take a sheet of printer paper, write out everything that I knew about the school, that I found out online, questions I want to ask, whatever, review that the night before. But then the day of your interview, don't look at it at all. You already prepared, you did what you had to do. Really, it comes down to just having a conversation. They just want to see that you have substance and that you say who you say you are, right? So like what I did was I would call my friends, I would just hang out with my dogs. Like I would just like literally chill, do nothing, put on my suit like 20 minutes before I'm a guy, so I don't need makeup or all that, but just put on your suit like 20 minutes before your interview and kind of just, take your chill pill and just relax, because the last thing you want is for like you to be all shaky and like freaking out over something that is entirely in your control, at least at the very beginning. And then if anything ever technical happens during your interview, let's say you get kicked out or you're waiting in the waiting room for 40 minutes and they're not letting you in, or whatever happens, just know that they are doing their best on their end to like get everyone in, do their identification process if there is one. So just know that like they're working on things, and that if there is some sort of issue, it will not affect you in any way, because they know that everyone else is having these issues as well. Because everyone's internet goes out, everyone has their bad times with Zoom. So it's kind of inevitable to experience things like that, but you just need to remind yourself that, just stay as calm as you possibly can, because that can end up hindering your performance or anything, like if you're too stressed out. So just like I said, relax, say your mantra if you have one, you have a quote, whatever, say that over and over again, pet your dogs, play with your toy thing or whatever you have. So just like keep calm, cool, and collected.
I loved all these. These are spectacular. Brandon, the comfort zone, it's always a sweet spot. Brandi, I mean, using affirmations the night before tests, say I'm going to get a 99. I've used those before, it worked. Sonia, the playlist to listen to, I've done that too. I wish I was able to do all those things before an oral surgery interview last year. My roommates made me shovel the snow out of the driveway. But yeah, these are all great. It's such a great night, guys. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for everyone putting on this event with us. We're happy to have you here. Thank you.